One moment. Do please sit down.
I'm fine.
All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have to say something before your thought.
No problems. I'm used to standing up at football matches, mate, so it's,
Yes.
it's my sort of scene.
This morning's proceedings, or today's proceedings, are being live streamed with a 10-minute delay. Those with mobile devices may use them to report what they're hearing in the hearing room, but not to photograph or record. Any reporting must be done 10 minutes after the event that is being reported or more. Yes.
Thanks.
Right, just repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Cheers. I'm all right.
You will have to speak sufficiently close to the microphones for everybody to be able to hear you.
No worries, I'll do that.
Yes. Yes.
Good morning.
Hello.
Can you give your full name, please?
Yeah, my full name is Mark Charlton Metcalf. In the northeast, you get your mum's maiden name, and my mum was called Charlton.
You've provided 3 witness statements to the inquiry.
Yep.
The first one is at Bundle C for the CRC, the Colin Roach Centre. It's behind A1 UCPI 37796. It's a statement of 16 pages, dated the 7th of March 2025. Do you recognise that statement as being the corporate statement that you wrote on behalf of the Colin Roach Centre?
Appropriate, the day after my mum's birthday. That's not what I just said.
Are the contents of that statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yeah, they are.
Thank you. You also wrote a personal statement, which is in the Mark Metcalf bundle behind tab A1, UCPI 37768. And that's a witness statement of 16 pages, again dated the 7th of March 2025.
Yeah.
Do you recognise that as your personal statement?
Yes, I do.
And can you confirm that the contents of that are true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yeah, I can.
And finally, you produced a second statement on behalf of the CRC, which is behind tab A2, UCPI 37795. And that's a 2-page document.
Aye.
Dated the 21st of the 3rd, of 21st of the, can we just go to the date at the end of that, please? 21st of the 3rd, yes, 2025. And
Yeah.
that was to exhibit those exhibits listed there on page 2.
Yes, indeed.
And can you confirm that that is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yeah, it is.
Those 3 statements and exhibits will stand as your evidence at the inquiry.
Okay, thanks.
I understand you've got a few opening words that you want to say, or would you like to leave those until the end?
No, I'm happy to start by saying them. It's not often that I praise Tory politicians, although we did have some dealings with them at the Colin Road Centre, particularly around Kurdish refugees, and they did keep their word, to be honest on that. But I'd like to praise Theresa May for ordering the inquiry and giving the opportunity, particularly to the women in this case. And I'd like to thank her also for having, after I'd organised a massive press conference on behalf of the Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign about 10 years ago, agreed to meet from campaigners from the Orgreave Truth and Justice campaign and to put into process the public inquiry. I'd like to note that John Dunn, who will be given evidence at that inquiry, will be watching on today. The final bit I'd like to see is, I'm of course aware that the spying on by Mark Jenner was only part of a longer process of being spied upon for reasons which I'm unfamiliar with. My personal view, I might as well state, is I think I was spied upon in this particular case largely because of the work which was undertaken on the policing issue, particularly by Graham Smith, and I think that because I was so active in so many other things and other events, that I was lobbed into that in particular. But I do believe it is around the policing issue which were very serious and very major, as exhibited by the fact that Graham was a regular. Graham appeared, I think, at one we did a little total up, and I think Graham appeared more than John Smith, who was the leader of the Labour Party at the time, during the period that John Smith, first on the national news more times than John Smith. So that gives you an idea, for those who are unfamiliar with this process, of how big the issue of policing was in the national news, on the TV, on the programme, Panorama, World in Action. And that's why I think, in particular, that I was spied upon.
Thank
That's
you.
it, really. Thanks for your time.
I recognise...
I'd like to see also the two other persons, the other person that are here for particular, because obviously Alison has given her thing, as he cannot be here, is Brian Higgins from the Building Worker Group, and I'd like to see that. I really wish whatever I can say on the building industry can be said much more coherently and better by Dave Smith, and Dave should be given the opportunity to come up here and speak on behalf of the Blacklist Support Group, and of course on behalf of himself. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I recognise that when we start asking, when I start asking you questions about the reporting, we're talking about events that are around 40 years ago. Yeah, of course. And so memories fade, but you say you've got a good memory.
Most of my stuff will be located around who Sunderland were playing at that weekend, except in the periods of May, June and July, when I have no memories of weekends because there's no football on.
Thank you very much. And obviously you're helped by contemporaneous documentation, both from what's been disclosed through the inquiry, but also those documents that you've retained yourself, like minutes of meetings, leaflets, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, still have a lot of that stuff up in the loft. It's not managed to drag some of the stuff out. There's some comments in here about how many policing cases we took up. I tried extensively to find the document, which I can see, because I actually typed it up, about the success that we had after Graham had left, and that was purely and simply based on Graham's work. The police were collapsing cases if the Colin Road Centre took cases up. Unfortunately, that led to some people who were actually guilty of some quite serious crimes getting off as well. So the community suffered doubly. If we managed to get people who hadn't done stuff found not guilty, that's great. But at the same time, other people who were guilty were got away with offences which we didn't really want them to get away with.
The officers that we're going to be looking at, primarily it's HN15 that we'll come to in due course, but there's some earlier reporting by an officer known as HN122, Neil Richardson, and he was deployed in the SDS from 1989 to 1993, first within the Revolutionary Communist Party and then class war. Do you recognise him?
I don't.
HN78, Trevor Morris, his cover name was Anthony Lewis or Bobby McGee, and he was deployed between 1991 and 1995 within the ANL East London and the Socialist Workers' Party in the Dalston branch. Do you recognise him?
No, I've no idea who these people are.
But you do know the officer DC Mark Jenner.
I know Mark, of course.
HN15.
I didn't know him as Mark Jenner, but I obviously. Yeah.
You knew him as Mark Cassidy.
Yes,
is that right?
Did.
Did you know him by any other name?
No, not that I can. He didn't. Mark wasn't the sort of guy who I couldn't imagine him taking the nicknames.
Okay.
We're a bit. As you get older, you've either got one or you haven't really. So he didn't have a nickname, not that I'm aware of anyway.
The inquiry knows that he was deployed by the Met Police into from the SDS from 1995 to 2000 into left-wing groups in London, including the Colin Roach Centre, Anti-Fascist Action, Red Action, and also reported on Irish Republican support groups in London. Unusually, he was specifically targeted to you as a named individual. He was also known by the code name Touchy Subject, and that name appears on some of his reporting, which we will get to. The inquiry understands that the operation code names were given in around March 1997 in anticipation of RIPA 2000 coming into force, which is the Regulation of
right.
Investigatory Powers Act,
Okay, yeah.
which required undercover officers to be registered as CHISs, or covert
Yes,
human
yes.
intelligence sources. And that's why he's been allocated this name touchy subject.
Okay.
Later on, around 2000 onwards, we know that DC Carlo Soraki was deployed by the SDS, and he infiltrated the group No Action. Are you familiar with
No.
somebody called Carlo Neri, which was his cover name?
I'm familiar with it because obviously some of the lasses and stuff have spoken about that, but I have no knowledge of that individual at all. If I met him, no, I can't honestly, I can't answer any questions on that. I don't know anything about him.
If I can ask you first then about your own background. You're from the Northeast.
All right.
And did you have quite a political background?
Yeah, I was political more or less from the age of 7 years of age. It was an anti-religious thing. When the Arab-Israeli war kicked off, I thought, well, I didn't believe in God by then anyway. My dad didn't believe in God. My dad was a plumber, a pipe fitter. He'd been ETPU rep. He'd fallen out over basically the CP were a dodgy organisation. He was a socialist himself, but he became disillusioned by socialism because socialism had become about what socialists could get out of the movement rather than actually putting the things into the movement. And he was pretty much dedicated to his family after that. He travelled all over Britain for work, as did most building workers. In '68, when Enoch Powell made his statement, he was actually working in Wolverhampton, and he had arguments with people on the sites. In his case, he walked off the sites because he didn't want to listen to what was being said in support of Enoch Powell, and so he was a difficult combination to some extent. Much later on, I can remember he'd become very soft in my view. When lads were getting killed on building sites, he was for collecting monies to give to their families, and my argument was you need to stop the site, you need to damage their production, you need to thing, which is why Brian Higgins comes into that.
And did you get involved in trade union
I went picketing. My dad took me. Firstly, the strike in '72 was on, and the miners' strike. It's a few miles from here. There wasn't any need for picketing to take place at Easton Colliery. It was exceptionally solid. It was in '74. My dad and my grandma and things. My grandma was one of the last people to work at the pit. In fact, not down the thing. Back it's the time of the they were both on strike in the 26th strike. I'm very proud of them. I was taking the Durham Miners Gala when it was, to now it's all dresses and fancy regalia. At the time when I was taken, it was lads whose faces were still black from working on shifts. But to give you some idea, they might get 500,000 in Durham, and I was taken that as a very young age, as I was taken to top-class football matches as well. It was a traditional upbringing in terms of that. The pit was the thing that was the most important, although we'd moved to Peterlee. I'm very proud to come from Peterlee. It's the only town named after a trade unionist in this country, just as Sunderland's the only club to be formed by a trade union. I feel that that is my generation in that respect.
Can I ask you
so
about...
that's the case. I feel that was the situation with my dad. My dad's politics had a big influence on myself, and I was taken picketing back down in Teesside. I was about 12 or 13. My mum went absolutely mental. She was right to do so. It was quite a difficult picket, to be frank.
You say in your statement that you moved from Birmingham to London in about 88.
I went to college. I became a youth and community worker. I worked in Smethwick with a lot of Asian youth at the time. It's a very poor area, Smethwick. You might remember it. It's still a poor area, to be frank. I went to Birmingham because whilst I was an anti-racist, I didn't know any black people. really, you cannot be an anti-racist and not know any black people.
The next document here, please.
I mean,
This is
that's there to show that whilst we were interested in fascists, we were interested in all sorts of fascism, and that included, as we went on, Islamic fundamentalism. There's an article in one of our magazine which says who put the mental in fundamental. That was the situation. We didn't just think that fascism could apply to UK politics, but it was of international concern.
So
And actually, we actually did manage to get that event stopped as it happened.
in support of the Kurdish community in the area.
Just in support of the fact, and often the same people were the people who were the employees of workers. So they were hostile to the workers' movement, and I don't know if it's coming out, but obviously I organised trade union delegations to Kurdistan. In the 1993 one, everybody was arrested. It was national news. It was first on the national news when they came back as the thing. I did the press conference. They'd gone to Diyarbakir, and they'd gone to the spot where the Turkish military had executed a number of peasants, and in doing that, they were fired upon, and then they were arrested. A bit like, I don't know what's it called, Express, I'm forgetting the things. And so we organised that. If people wanted to do that and we could get the monies together, we would show solidarity and support wherever that was possible. The stuff around the Turkish stuff proved to be exceptionally important in 2002 in Sunderland, when the local police force were telling Turkish supporters to go into town in Sunderland. And I went on all the Turkish radio stations and said, don't go into town. There's groups of British fascists who are going to attack you. And I managed to persuade the Turkish fans to go straight into the ground. So that was important also in my own, it's not my town, I'm not from Sunderland, but I'm from down the road anyway.
Next document, please. This is to do with the building workers group, which was led by Brian Higgins,
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, indeed. That pamphlet was published by the Cullen Road Centre, as it says, rank and file or broad left. The differences, me and Dave Smith could argue about that all the time. I still think it'd be better if he was up here, because they've done far better work than I ever conducted. But the argument was, and this is something which I argued with Mark Jenner about, ironically, I hadn't thought about this at the time, but the first day I came, the second day I came, and I walked through there the other day to Hackney, I went to Broadway Market, okay, and that was the place where 3 workers had put some stuff into a sewerage system, and they'd gone down too early and they'd been killed. And it took me back to my dad and all the times he was coming home early from building sites where workers had been killed. And I just thought, it's a disgrace. And then, so that was in my mind all the time. And what happened was there was 3 building workers a week were being killed. Now, I don't know if you know the statistics, but the statistics are of, say, 100 people that get killed. When they do the research for this, 70% are as a result of bad practices by management. Okay. Now, what you have to get is the politics of this at this point has to be explained to make this understand. I'm sorry if this take a couple of minutes, but the situation was, it was being argued that the trade union officials were not doing anything about this, and so it was argued that we should break the law, which was defy the anti-trade union laws, by putting pickets on workplace gates where workers were being killed. And so the intention was, and we did carry this out into practice on a number of occasions, we went along to those sites, we said to workers, your mates have been killed yesterday, we need you to stop work. And they asked us why. We'd say, firstly, out of solidarity. Secondly, the only way you're going to get any justice and stop the further deaths of building workers is by hitting profits, and you need to stop work. And that caused absolute apoplexy amongst UCAT, amongst the T&G, and amongst the JMB, as it was. I was in the JMG, as a JMW as a youngster, before it moved to 82, where B stands for Boilermakers, which nobody knows what it stands for.
Well, it's a Boilermaker, anybody else. So anyway, no, but you need to understand, this is it. This is very, very important for me, and it's one of the reasons why I'm here. At the same time, they were talking about trying to get what was called a Corporate Manslaughter Act into it. And that booklet was on Brian Higgins's blacklisting file. But also, what they were trying to do was to stop that campaign, okay? And they were going to pretend that they were going to do something about the deaths on the building sites. So when the UCAT official sued Brian Higgins, okay, that was led by a leading civil rights solicitor. Well, I'll get into trouble if I say her name, I guess, at this particular situation, okay? Okay? And so the issue at hand was, we were saying a Corporate Manslaughter Act law will make no difference to the building workers. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. We need to stop the sites. We'll have to stop the sites. We'll have to stop the sites. And that's why civil action was taken over that booklet. And we were right, and it has proved to be the case. We won the civil rights case, but we lost the struggle, okay? We lost that struggle, okay? And as a consequences of it, hundreds of building workers continue to get killed. And that is a crime. And I argued with Mark Cassidy, as it was, because he was a building worker, that it was a disgrace and that there should be laws that would prevent these things. I actually said to him, you know, I didn't actually say to him, but obviously you're a copper, you need to go out and do those things. But that was their responsibility. That was the police's responsibility. Them and the health and safety executive were charged with taking up cases against employers who were responsible for the deaths of building workers. They have that responsibility. They didn't do that. They didn't want to do that. Okay? So when we're talking about violence, the violence of working class people's lives are exemplified in that booklet, which is the best booklet that was done at the end of last century on the trade union movement. By far. There's no similar book, but that's the importance to it. So we got the corporate crime responsibility, and it's a handful of people have gone, and none of the big people have gone. None of the people, obviously, at Grenfell will be gone to prison. None of these people will be gone to prison. We know that. I mean, I can, you know, I'm not worth a lot of money, but I'd back everything on it, put it that way. They ain't gonna go to prison.
And we know being a building worker was part of Mark Jenner's legend.
It was his front.
And he,
as I used to say to him, you don't
became
look
a member of UCAT.
I used to say to him when he used to come to Colin Road Centre, but you don't look much like a building worker because you're never dirty.
And we know that he became involved in the Brian Higgins defence campaign as well.
He became the secretary. I've subsequently seen some letters where he's written to trade unionists. Yeah, he was acting obviously as a fraud. There were other aspects of Mark's work around the building worker group where he was exceptionally brave. The picketing Southwark, he was very brave. If we can come on to that as well, I know that you mentioned that to do with bike chain. Yeah, he was very brave.
If we can go to the next document, please. So this is again an RPM publication. That's Revolutions Per Minute, isn't it? Which was one of the CRC.
You can see at the bottom, it's the Pat Finucane Centre. The Pat Finucane Centre was the only organisation that the trade union, that the Colin Road Centre had a working relationship with, and it was the Pat Finucane Centre through Mary Nellis who came to the centre at the same time as we were being burgled, and we took up the issue of the peace process. To be fair, most of the people involved in the Colin Road Centre hadn't really been, as Alison mentioned, I've done it right, as mentioned, had no knowledge of Ireland, whereas I've had a knowledge of Ireland since the early 70s. My best mate was on the Falls Road in 1971. So
you had a good understanding of the troubles in Northern Ireland.
I call it a war. You can call it what you want, but for me it was a war. My mate had a weapon when he walked down the Falls Road in 71.
And in relation to the Pat Finucane Centre, there was a relationship there that we'll look at as well a little bit later. Moving on to the next document. We didn't have a delegation, by the way, to Derry. Steve was unsure about that, but we never had a delegation. To be fair, the delegation we went on in 1995, when I realised it was going to make me miss the first game of the season, I was deeply disappointed. Well, I got beat as well. So politics is very important, but football trumps that.
I wanted to go on the week before.
Next document, please. Again, another document in commemoration of those who suffered and died in police custody.
You have to separate the one on the right. I'm more than happy about that. We had massive dues and massive support around the Criminal Justice Act, and still got mates of mine who came and did stewarding and stuff for some events that were put on. Still bounces around London, but that was the march. There was obviously that wasn't just this. We had posters, we had a lot of people on that, and that, as I said, that's the point. We were just starting to move. We had moved. We'd had the burglary, not because of the burglary, but the facilities. Disabled people couldn't get into the place, so we'd moved to a shop floor premises out of Dalston and down to Mare Street on the Pembury estate.
Can I just ask you one thing about the top right-hand paragraph, that last sentence? We are raising some of our concerns in order to discuss how to build genuine and lasting working-class community resistance to the state.
That's it, yeah.
Now, in terms of the word resistance, we've heard evidence about what does resistance mean, what does violence mean, and words like that. Does resistance here, in this context, mean anything to do with violence or subversion or anything like that?
Well, you've just got to look into... Our campaigning was against what, if you're going to, on a general political term, we were against the violence of capitalism, okay, which was poverty in particular, massive amounts of poverty in Hackney, you know, on the Pembury estate or the rest of it. So, for example, a lassie, Georgina, for example, she did stuff around housing. So we regularly had stuff where people were trying to get better places to live. But there's only so many better places you can get to live. So we would seek, and we were unsuccessful in this, and it's what contributed to the closure of the centre. We wanted people who were campaigning on their own individual issues to become active members in the Colin Road Centre to campaign on an issue which was of importance to them. Housing happened to be one, not just policing. In terms of resistance, we wanted a general resistance. I'm an anti-capitalist. I ultimately believe that system of profit now, especially in a world of half the world's not eaten properly, is a system that needs to be replaced, just as feudalism was replaced. I don't believe, however, it will just be replaced without resistance, and that's the where the word resistance comes from. Do you mean it involved violence? If we got attacked, yeah, it meant we would resist. I've made no doubts about that. If somebody attacks me or intends to attack me, then I'll do my best to resist, and I'll do my best to organise people to resist. Do you mean it's going to go out on the streets attacking people just generally willy-nilly, that sort of stuff? That'd be absolutely pointless. We'll have to win working class people to our situation. I had loads of my mates who've been in the British Army. I strongly disagree with their politics. But if I have a beer with one or two, and they've died in the main, they've got somebody I know is a para, that sort of stuff, firstly, I wouldn't be able to win a scrap with them anyway, so there's absolutely no doubt about that anyway. So no, it means it's a general collective sense rather than the things... In the political
no,
sense. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, we've had this, I mean, particularly when I was involved, because I was elected to a post that was important, and we made sure that people didn't get elected. It wasn't believe you me, it didn't make you wealthy post. And some of the stuff that people would say, we would do this, this and this. I'm not a pacifist, but you would think I was a pacifist, to be frank. I was looking at these things saying, did I really say that? I'm slightly confused. I said that. And to be fair, the amounts of violence that I've seen associated with the Colin Road Centre was nothing compared to the violence that I've seen up until Hillsborough came around. By the time Hillsborough came, in the 80s, every away game you went with Sunderland, there was fighting. I mean, everywhere you went, there was fighting at the football. After Hillsborough, people quite rightly, they got into taking ecstasy. Not me personally, never took drugs in my life. I think I once had some cannabis in a cake, and I think...
Can I bring you back to the document? I think we're going off on a tangent, but...
You know what I mean?
The last two
I'm
documents.
very English. I go to football matches and I drink beer, and that's it, really. You know,
The
there's
last-
no more than that. There's no more than that.
The last two documents I
there's
think
no
we have
more
to see
than that.
together. So it's actually the final document is the front of this exhibit. So this is the Community Defence publication from March 1993. It's looking at corrupt cops, stay on patrol, and then
Dennis,
the previous exhibit
great leaflet
is within that publication.
Great
so
leaflet.
again, that's the sorts of work that you were involved with, opposing corruption within the police.
Very proud of all the people that played whatever role that they did. They did an absolutely magnificent job in defending the community. It's why, obviously, when the Pat Van Auken Centre wanted to do things in England, as this was the best known. And don't forget, we've had people here, and I'm not knocking them, we've had representatives of similar organisations. They were all state-funded. None of us were state-funded. We'd have councillors getting up and saying, we've got to stop the funding. They would get up and say, this group is too successful, we have to stop the funding. And people would say to them, there was one famous case in Hackney Council where one of them made a big speech about HDD, and at the end basically said, you've got to stop the funding. And they said to him, they don't fund them. And he said, well, they should, in order that they could stop the funding. That's how successful it had become. You know?
I'd like to move on, if we can, to the actual targeting of Mark Jenner. So I can show you the document in relation to his targeting strategy from 1995.
Right.
The inquiry understands that he joined the SDS in September 1994, and he was deployed into the field on the 20th of February 1995. The targeting strategy is in Mark Metcalf's bundle B20 MPS 0735326, and it's a document of the 1st of February 1995. So we can see here that this is an SDS operational strategic report. This is something that was in your bundle. I'd like to refer you specifically, if I can, to paragraph 1.4 that looks at the short-term and long-term objectives. So, two strategic objectives. First, short-term one is to participate in public order events of interest to anarchists. And in the long term, DC Jenner will have scope to develop contacts with more security conscious anarchists involved in criminal activity in any of the following fields, and it lists anti-fascist, for example, Solidarity Federation, East London Anti-Fascist Action, or environmentalist, for example, Earth Liberation Front, or animal rights, for example, the Animal Liberation Front. Paragraph 2.1 and 2.2 go on to describe the nature of anarchist groups. And if you can take a moment just to read that. So
That's
this
fine.
presents the SDS understanding of anarchist groups. Paragraph 2.3, please. Leading figures are noted as Norman Blair of London Class War and Mark Metcalf of the Hackney Community Defence Association. It says they are often involved in coordination of opposition to Hackney Council, for instance in housing, environment and education policy, government policy, the Criminal Justice Act and immigration matters, etc. Local racist activity, campaigns by British National Party, and local police. Allegations of harassment, racism, wrongful arrest, etc. And depending on circumstances...
There was allegations of harassment. I think they had been proven by then.
And depending...
Even at the Court of Appeal, police officers' evidence was being knocked back on the basis that judges were saying that the evidence against people came from unreliable witnesses. Those unreliable witnesses were Metropolitan Police officers. So they couldn't even get that correct. They couldn't even from the very start admit that what was being engaged in by Hackney Community Defence Association was criminal activity by the police. There has been no doubt about that. So they, even from the very start of his thingy, is based on a rewrite of history. That is a rewrite of history. There's no allegations; those are proven. They had 2 World in Action programmes and it was a 2 World in Actions and 1 Panorama programme. They're not allegations; they are proven. So that, to be fair, firstly, the stuff about the HCD thing, that is wrong. There's no doubt about that wrong. So they're not allegations. There's plenty of other stuff I can pick apart in there, but they're not allegations.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you...
Even Hackney Police themselves were admitting there weren't allegations, they were facts.
Yeah. I don't think it's disputed that there were problems
within
the police.
I'm not disputing what you're saying, but what I'm saying is what's written down here, where they say allegations, that's wrong. And it comes up, doesn't it, in part of the thing where one police officer says he's going to do something about it. You know what I mean? Absolute fantasy. I mean, just utter fantasy, to be frank.
What I'd like to ask you about this document,
in that.
It's focusing on anarchism.
I'm not an anarchist. I've never been an anarchist. To be fair, I could understand why they might see it, because Trotskyists would say that I was an anarchist, and anarchists would say that I was a Trotskyist. So I can give them that. I can understand why.
So it's not way off the mark.
I can understand why people would say that. As long as they don't say I'm a Newcastle fan, I don't care. That's the truth of the matter. That's it, really.
The last sentence here says, depending on circumstances, such opposition may be vocal or violent. What do you say about that? Vocal, surely.
Where does it say that, please?
Last sentence and paragraph 2.3.
Well, it'd be very, very vocal.
Yeah.
And if the BNP, I mean, okay, we might as well get it out in the open. In 1990, Combat 18 was set up, okay? And on the front cover of the first issue, I was on the front cover, okay? And in the second one, my address was there, okay? So check that in, okay? This is an organisation which has been described in various ways, okay? The address which was given to them without doubt by the Metropolitan Police. How do I know that? Because at the time, I was being charged with something for which was subsequently dropped. And the address that they had for me was the school next door, okay? Which was number 3 instead of number 2.
And
the
that's
Combat
the address
18 magazine, which came out, had my address on as the wrong address. The only place that I could have come from was the Metropolitan Police. Who was the person putting out that magazine? The person who put out that magazine subsequently stabbed to death one of his best mates. What did he do when he stabbed those 2 people? Before he went to give evidence in terms of, and he got sent to prison. What did he do? He asked for his 2 handlers from the police, from different departments of the police, to actually have evidence with him. So here we've got a magazine run by a lad who committed murder, who had police handlers. And that evidence, that details on my address, was given to them by the Metropolitan Police. Now, what am I supposed to do? If somebody's going to come round my house or make it difficult, I certainly was not going to stand on ceremony to be attacked.
So what you're saying is, if there was violence, it would be in self-defence?
It would be in self-defence. But if somebody come round my house, I wasn't going to be, I certainly was not, me personally, I was not going to be hit first. You can be guaranteed of that. Anybody who come round my house or the premises, the rest of the stuff, was not got. It would be dealt with, and if the other person came off worst, well, I'll take my chances.
Can I ask you to look at paragraph 2.6 and 2.7, which describe the SDS perceived threat posed by anarchists? I'm not going to read it out.
Honestly, I mean, on the first day I arrived in Hackney, right? Can I just describe this situation, right? I went onto the estate, the anarchists blew up a car, okay, over the squatting things, right? It was the first day I got chased by the police and I got chased by the anarchists who knew I was not an anarchist. Right? So there's no secret about it. They're all recorded. All these incidents are recorded.
But what I'm wanting to look at is just the targeting strategy and the accuracy of this particular document, because it seems that this is the one that sets out Mark Jenner's targeting and why he's targeted into the CRC and in particular to report on you.
I've no idea.
So just having a general sense of
it's wrong.
Where they're coming from.
It's wrong.
You say it's not
wrong.
accurate.
The truth of the matter is, and I'm not an anarchist. I'm dismissive of anarchism, to be frank. I think that most anarchists don't work hard enough in their politics, and I think they pick and choose what actions or activities they think. And my experiences, the best example which I can name was when we held the Trafalgar Square Defendants Campaign stuff. We had no, hang on a second. We had a whole load of meetings to organise these events. Okay, on the day it snowed, the main anarchist involved, who's appeared regularly and will appear regularly at this event, he was outvoted. He was outvoted as one thing. I was the first person there at the conference, and he'd swept the whole of the agenda back to the one which he'd been outvoted for. If you ask me, was I going to get violent? At that point, I was like furious, absolutely furious, that he had no right to do so. He was told directly, we switched back the agenda that we were. And that's how I felt about that. There were other anarchists who worked very hard. So anarchists were not running the Colin Road Centre. There were anarchists involved, but and many of them were actively involved, and there were the things. But I'm not an anarchist. I'm not a Trotskyist either, to be fair. So
okay,
just to
and I think it's clear within the left-wing groups and the people who were organising, there were political differences as well.
Massive political differences.
But
they were resolved.
Just in terms of this document,
by vigorous
Mr. Metcalf,
discussions.
if I can draw your attention back to
what
this
you
document.
need to understand is all of these issues are resolved through discussions and disagreements. Sometimes the left does not go fighting with each other. It engages in vigorous discussions. Often people are falling out long term about these situations, but it's not a violent movement.
It isn't
a violent movement.
Trigger any violence that would be of any interest to the police. Is that your evidence?
Events trigger violence. Yeah, of course they do. We're dealing with very serious political subjects in which people feel exceptionally passionate about. Absolutely, of course they do, and it comes into conflict with the state. And what happens? There's no question about that. People will look after themselves, but we didn't go into meetings and start falling out with each other. We have discussion, we have debate, and people who do go to meetings and start throwing their weights around, they get expelled.
Can I ask you to look at paragraph 2.8, which looks at the different approach between the SDS and the security service assessment. So we have the SDS, the SDS's perspective, and this is a particular paragraph that you comment on in your witness statement, where you say that, well, the SDS assessment in terms of any a perceived need to report on you is different to that of the security service assessment. Do you want to say anything in relation to this?
In terms of that thing, there's absolutely nothing that I can say about class war, and I can't comment on class war.
Well, the SDS is saying that actually a loose federation or network of small groups of anarchists do have an influence that is far more pervasive than is allowed in the security service assessment. So the security services weren't particularly interested, but the police SDS were. Do you have anything to say about that?
Stacks I could say, but I find that, I suppose the only word I can think of is ridiculous.
Paragraph 3.3, please. This is in relation to the strategy that Mark Jenner was to take. says that London Class War and the Hackney Community Defence Association are probably not worthy of monitoring in terms of their own importance, but both are assessed to be suitable vehicles for an undercover officer establishing an anarchist reputation. So it appears here that this is a vehicle for Mark Jenner to then integrate within other groups. From your experience of some of the groups that he did ultimately infiltrate, so Anti-Fascist Action and Red Action, did his relationship with you and his experience with the CRC actually gain him access to those other groups? Or would he have been able to infiltrate those groups without using CRC and you as a stepping stone into those left-wing groups?
I can't say if another approach would have been a stepping stone. Steve Headley explained it exceptionally well. Whilst I was happy to attend from about 1992 onwards anti-fascist action events, as they were a successful anti-fascist organisation, me and myself, as a relationship between my former comrades, I had been in Red Action, and I'll explain why I was in Red Action, and I had been in anti-fascist action. My reputation with the leading lights in those organisations was one of great hostility. So it was unlikely, well, I felt on their basis it would be unlikely that they would think that I was a person that they would want to associate with another organisation. They might want to pick him off to become actively involved in their organisation, but my reputation wouldn't be. Okay. They wouldn't think that worthy. No chance.
Last point on this document then. So paragraph 4.4 goes over to the next page. It says it's also envisaged that the officer will initially devote substantial time to nurturing important social contacts in Hackney. Ideally, when he first approaches a group like the HCDA, he will already have a believable short-term background in the area. For example, his profile would receive a significant boost if at his first important meetings he was seen in the company of a friend, in quotes, rather than appearing as a loner. Suffice to say here, much time has been spent discussing relevant aspects of tradecraft with the officer. No doubt he will have benefited from advice given by former operatives in this and allied fields. Now, from your witness statement, it appears that you recall that first meeting with Mark Jenner when he approached you. I think you were at a stall in the Halkavi event in 1995, and he approached you. Do you recall whether he approached you with a friend or whether he was on his own?
Mark Jenner was on his own when he approached us.
And he quickly inveigled himself into a close friendship with you, is that right?
He became a mate of mine, yes, and that is the case, yeah.
You say that he came to your flat regularly. You used to go to the pub and football together.
To be fair, people didn't come around my flat an awful amount. So usually when I left people, it was late at night. I did go drinking. Initially when I moved to London, I drank a lot. But by that period of time, that wasn't the case. It certainly wasn't the case at weekends. Friday, I would, if I had something on politically, then I had to do that politically. Otherwise, I'd be going to the match. I would get a lift up at 8:30 in the morning of my mates of mine up to Sunderland. I would go on the train, and on Sundays I played football. I played football. Some very good teams that we had up in Canterbury, and then I played for some of the Turkish groups. I got paid for playing football. There was betting going on, and then I would go in the afternoon. I would sometimes play 2 games. I'd go and play for the London supporters branch. So.
But was Mark Jenner involved in,
none
in
of
those
those
activities?
things. Mark Jenner didn't. Mark Jenner was it would be. I'd stack some mates, and to suggest that Mark was somehow like especially in terms of that situation, that's not the case. Absolutely not.
At one stage, he came
And
up to Sunderland with you, didn't he?
Aye, he came
and he
for the Tranmere game.
Yeah, and did he visit
He
your
went to my mum
parents'
and dad's
house as well?
He'd agreed. My mum, my dad, by that point, he'd had dementia, Alzheimer's. They never actually found out what he had, and eventually I moved home to look after him for a couple of days a week, take him out of the home, which he got put into a home, and he'd become quite violent, so my mum wanted rid. I had thousands of football programs. I still got thousands of football programs, but not only the Sunderland ones I've got, obviously, for my writing. And
was Mark keen to come up with you?
Yeah, he's very keen. He's very keen, and to be honest, he went in with the Tranmere fans. Tranmere had their usual fairly paltry away support. They're not the greatest supporters, and the reason why I mention that is because obviously it's ultimately, which made me think, well, he's not what he said.
So you write about that later, don't you, in some articles?
Of course. I went
to
the match as usual stuff, and my mate who's there, not very clever nickname, he's called Tranny because he supports Tranmere, and they're from Swindon as against Tranmere supporters from Swindon. Sounds bizarre, doesn't it? To be fair, and it's just like sounds bizarre. And actually, the other lad who we come from, his mate who supports Sunderland, he's got an NF tattoo on his hand, basically, which is an interesting thing because he's not in fascist anymore, but he's never took NF off his arm and stuff. And I said, oh, you'll know Mark, he goes to half the games, and he's sort of looking at him going, never seen this bloke before in my life. So at that point I thought, this doesn't work out. Just doesn't. I'd already begun to have some doubts. I'd never really shared them with people in the Colin Road Centre. I shared them with my closest female friend. She won't mind her name. She's called Carol. I've known her for donkey's years. And that was it. I'd already said I cannot really work out what this lad is, basically.
Was there any work reason for Mark Jenner to accompany you up north? Was there any political meetings going on?
No,
was there anything else?
No, I was going to see me. I was going to see me mum and dad. I was going to pick up the programmes, going to bring them back. My plan was to sell them. I did sell them. Deeply regret selling them. One of the worst decisions I ever made in my life. And that was it. And I was very grateful. I was very pleased. I didn't think we'd get there. He had a leak in the car, in the van, an oil leak, and I was like amazed that I wasn't the driver myself. Then we went. I was very pleased he went. I wasn't happy Tranmere got a draw. They did beat us the last day of the season, but we had got promoted, so I was more than happy about that. That was it. It's a rubbish game, terrible game. It was a terrible match. You're laughing, but it was a terrible football match.
You did say at the very beginning of your witness statement that you have a very good memory, and it seems that you do particularly.
I mean, once on a radio station where they asked me questions about what days was this of the week, and I got all them right, and they said, well, that's unbelievable. And I said, well, it's not that unbelievable, because if you'd asked in May, June or July, I wouldn't know any of the dates, because I couldn't locate them around the football. I can't do that now. My memory's not that strong.
You say in your witness statement that there's no way that Mark Jenner could have known about all the decisions that you made in relation to CRC.
Absolutely impossible.
Work.
At the same time, we'd set up a group called Sunderland Fans Against Racism. We were leafleting in the supporters because there was considerable, despite the fact that we've had black footballers for many years at Sunderland Football Club, there was still a lot of stuff, and subsequently the club was forced to recognise that there was supporters amongst the club who were campaigning against racism. I had first given out, I never actually gave out the leaflet. The first attempt by the National Front to leaflet at Sunderland was their last, and that was against Tottenham Hotspur in 1977. And there was a leaflet called Raw, which I've never seen, called Roper Against Racism. The National Front turned up and they got chased, and they never came back.
You say in your statement that the purpose of the relationship with Mark Jenner was just a giant listening exercise that was used to collect information. Can you give us an idea of how much of the CRC work was actually public in terms of campaigning, leafleting?
All of it was public. All of my work, obviously you're not going to go and tell everything, because it's not, nobody's interested. Why would you do that? But we had minutes, we circulated them to contacts, we constantly encouraged new people to get involved. If people came in with something which concerned them, if we had somebody who could help them set up a campaign or run stuff or get leaflets. So for example, just down the road from us, there was a young man killed. It was called Andy Davey, okay? The police were doing nothing. He was an anarchist lad, okay? We're doing nothing about it. And we wanted to find out who'd killed him. In my case, information was shared with me about who may or may not be, okay? And that was the situation.
And
I was forced to pass that information thing. I had no problems in doing so. Didn't feel that things. We never got any justice for the lad.
How much access did Mark Jenner have to people's personal data and legal information in relation to some of the campaigns that you were involved in?
He had, I would say, he had limited access to doing that. We were very conscious of people's purse, so if they were involved in cases and the rest of them, but there were cases discussed, issues which were discussed at meetings, and people who were involved in campaigns, he would have some knowledge. He would have some knowledge of the housing stuff, for example, because he might well help out or assist people in talking to things. He would know about, we had so many, I mean, and he was in the premises, so not a mass, he would know about the situations, but he wasn't in there going through the files and the rest of the stuff, and he wasn't, no.
So you've told us already that at some stage when the HCDA moved out and CRC took over the policing issues cases, you say in your witness statement that in 1996 CRC provided help through free legal advice sessions to 98 people in legal battles.
I can't find that document.
Legal battles with the police and won 90 cases, plus numerous housing cases.
Incredible success rate, as I said, but also based on the fact that the police, once they knew the centre was involved and we had the really top-class solicitors, they would collapse the cases.
You make the point quite clearly that they're not anti-police cases, but they're cases against the police in an attempt not to stand for bad policing or wanting good policing.
We wanted people who came in and we examined their cases and the solicitors examined the cases. And to be frank, if it was blatantly obvious, some of the cases we would not want to take up. We'd advise them to go somewhere else. And that was a bit of our judgment as well and things. But we knew some of the people who came in the centre and before then HCTA were crooks and criminals.
How much involvement did Mark Jenner have in those cases?
Absolutely. He didn't have any involvement in those cases because the solicitors were bright solicitors, the cleverest in the country, and they were not going to give him access to that sorts of information. I understand an earlier police officer suggests that he had access to HCDA stuff. That police officer is an absolute out-and-out liar.
So I've got half an eye on the time. Is now a good time to take the mid-morning break?
Certainly. We have a break of about 15 minutes.
I've been here a couple of days. So
yeah, you know the routine. Okay, in which case
get a cup of tea. So
I needn't explain it. 15 minutes.
Cheers.
Thank you. Mr. Metcalf, I'd like to ask you, if I can, about a few of the justice campaigns that you were involved with. In your witness statement, you talk about Brian Douglas and his campaign. He was a 33-year-old black man who was arrested on the 3rd of May 1995 by Kennington police officers. He was beaten to the head with police batons and collapsed into unconsciousness at the police station and died 5 days later on the 8th of May 1995. His family approached the Colin Roach Centre, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you explain why they came to you?
Mainly because of HCDA's reputation, and the fact that we were known for taking up people's cases, and if we were asked for advice and support, we would try and pass on the experiences that we had gained so they could run their campaigns in the best way possible. And a massive amount of accumulated experience combined with very great solicitors and barristers could be of use to those people in their campaigning. However, in this particular case also, there's no other way of putting it, that we were approached because of the fact that there were large numbers of community organisations in Brixton who the Douglas family didn't actually trust, and they felt that there would be competing forces, some of which, and so they asked us as a sort of neutral group. It didn't go down awfully well, to be frank, because of the differences in the colour of my skin compared to some of the community group campaigners that were campaigning in the Brixton region.
You say that what you did for the campaign was you held peaceful events, gave out leaflets, so. and undertook searches for witnesses, and that's
correct.
What you tended to do for campaigns.
That's absolutely the case. There's no events, that there was an attempt on anything that I was involved, even when I was in AFA, there was never ever an intention to go and fight with the police. Never. Was
Mark Jenner involved in the Brian Douglas campaign?
He must have been involved in the thing. He didn't come to the meeting in Brixton where the events and the fairly vigorous discussions took place. At those meetings, there's some very high public profile figures came as well, who were involved in TV, radio and press, who were involved in campaigning as well. He didn't come to those, but he did come, as I recall, in his van and the rest. There was so much going on. I cannot remember his specific situation. The people in Brixton also were exceptionally well organised, and so that was really, we were just a bit of a neutral thing instead of groups. And to be fair, the same situation happened with a lot of the Kurdish groups in Hackney. We were approached to chair meetings because we didn't have.
Mr. Metcalf, there's one report that I'd like to refer you to, which is in relation to Brian Douglas. So if I can bring that up, and you can have a look at it. It's in Mark Metcalf's bundle B26 MPS 0245187. It's a report from the 10th of June 1995.
I can't see. Oh, thank you. Okay.
It should be up on your screen now. In relation to a march and rally. It said that in terms of numbers attending, 600 to 800, disorder, none, mood, expectant. Paragraph 1, if you'd like to just read that. In particular, it says that the lack of any incident to set things off was fortuitous. What do you say about that? Was it fortuitous that there was no disorder, or was there any expectation of disorder?
Well, as I've just tried to say a few minutes back, the intention on any of these events was to prevent any confrontation between the demonstrators and the police. Okay. And can I just state that was generally the situation. Certainly, we couldn't stop people if fighting with the police. But for example, on the day of the poll tax riots that took place in Hackney, afterwards, large numbers of black youth turned up to have a scrap with the police. They were mainly black youth, and I spoke to them. I told them what had happened, and I asked them to go home. And I said that was the situation. And in that case, we were fortunate, because the black youth, for lots of reasons, and we know the reasons, at the Colin Road Centre, for example, occasionally we had police officers who rang us up, who were telling us about black youth who were getting beaten up in the police station. So we knew on a regular basis, and the new police station was regarded as a fortress. Sorry, I hadn't realised I'd put this on. I thought I'd turned it off. So the situation was, for us, we definitely didn't want any violence. Absolutely no. I can't say if it was fortuitous. We can only do people who are distressed, naturally distressed, angry and upset. So sometimes that does break out in violence. But certainly the intention of all of those events was that we didn't want any bother. I mean, what we were a group of people with tracksuits, t-shirts and tops on. I mean, firstly we'd lose.
I think it's
know,
recorded as well.
If I'm going to have a fight, didn't want to lose. So there's no chance of that, really. No.
In terms of the sway that you held within the community as well, I think it's
didn't have any
recording.
sway in the Brixton community. I had no sway. I had no sway except for the fact that I was involved with the student. The Brixton community and the people there didn't know anything about me.
But in terms of up in Hackney, you were well known and well respected in the community, weren't you?
No, that wouldn't stop. That wouldn't stop people. It might help, but that wouldn't stop people if they were angry and upset. No, I mean, I didn't have the sway where I could. I'm not a community leader as such. No, I'm not suggesting that. I'd try and win them over by the argument, by the politics, and the fact that at least they would know with my accent, whereas the Irish accent was knocked yesterday wrongly. My accent would have some standing, and they would know that what I was doing was representing like a working class accent. People would know that. Some people might know me, but I wouldn't say that was the case. Certainly some of the young lads who I knew in Hackney, they played football. I mean, I played for a mixed race team and I played for a Turkish team, so I knew quite a lot of lads through the football. You know, and in the case the lad I used to play football, we used to have to, it was a situation where the lad I used to go at the match with one of the teams, we had to choose which car we went. Because if we went in one car, he had a nice car, black car, he was in his car, we would get stopped. And if we went in an old battered car, we would get the match. So when it was important, I played inside forward, him playing centre forward. So we were pretty, and he was a very, very good footballer. Played Saturday football for non-league teams, and so to get him to play. So we used to say to him, whatever you do, take the old car, don't take the new car. We had the situations, because his boy is me, although he's from mixed. No, hang on a second, this is important. We had a situation where we got into football, and we got stopped a number of times in the car, and his boy, you would look at his boy, you wouldn't think he was mixed race. And the cops would go and say, you go and stand with your dad. And I'd say, I'm not his dad. And the guy, don't be shaky. And they would make him come and stand with him. And he would say, that's me dad. And we'd have a standoff. We would leave the house half an hour early. That was the situation which took place in Hackney when I went and played football.
In terms of this document and what happened on the Brian Douglas march, at paragraph 2, we can see that there's a potential incident where a black officer was surrounded.
And then that got very tense. Yes.
And then stewards stepped in. Were you one of the stewards that stepped in?
I wasn't one of the stewards that stepped in. I was not. But that's a fair description, I would say.
But in terms of the stewards, was it generally that they were there to maintain order.
Of course.
And
Of
if
course.
there was some disorder, it was often...
It was to stop people getting arrested
But in
and
terms
getting
of the
into
disorder...
situations where they could be arrested. And it was also a simple situation in all these events is if the police act inappropriate or aggressively is also to prevent the arrest of people who shouldn't get arrested. That's also an aspect of stewarding.
And would it be fair to say that in terms of any disorder, that may come from different parts of the group that you had no control of? They weren't affiliated to
I'm
CRC,
not in charge
for
of
instance?
the Metropolitan Police, and the events were on many occasions where the Metropolitan Police introduced the violence to the events. What we wanted to do was to steward that ourselves, to make sure we had plenty of stewards that would prevent any incidents turning up. We did not want the Metropolitan Police to be stewarding those events. And I made clear in any discussions that I had on events like this that we would be able, in a position, to steward this. If we couldn't, then we didn't have the respect of the community. Our thing, this is people who died. We wish to pay honour to them at the same time as representing the grievances that took place. We didn't want, but if people got arrested on these events, we would represent them.
Was there ever any communication between the CRC and the police before these events happened in terms of informing the police that there was a plan?
Of course.
Or was that generally publicised through leafleting and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Of course, in terms of the situation. We would tell them what was happening, and we would say when certainly in Hackney there was absolutely never any need for the police to turn up on any HCD events. Never. We were never going to be attacked by fascists. People were extremely supportive of the work that we were doing. We had massive, large community support. We didn't need events on most of the events that I was involved with during the period. I'm sure we can pick out a few. We didn't need the police to prevent anybody attacking us, and we were not going to go out of our way to attack other people. Never. And if we didn't have that situation, then realistically, then we'd lost the support of the community.
Were you involved in the Michael Menson Justice campaign?
Not massively. I wasn't massively. I know about the campaign, and I think we offered some leaflets and the rest of the stuff. And it's a name that I remember. I'd have to be reminded about it.
That's okay.
No, I can't.
Can you tell us whether Mark Jenner was involved in it
I
at all?
can't.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Joy Gardner is somebody that you say in your witness statement you knew well before she died. She was a 40-year-old Jamaican mature student, mother to a 5-year-old boy, and she died on the 1st of August 1993, which was 4 days after she was detained during a police immigration raid on her home in Crouch End. Mr. Metcalf, I understand you find this difficult, and I won't go into how particularly she was restrained or died, but
it isn't about actually her death at this point that I find difficult.
I understand this is difficult evidence for you, but I would
Yes,
like to
very difficult.
just show a few press cuttings, if I can, in relation to what was reported in the newspapers following her death, if you allow me to.
By all means, to do that. But can I stress, it's not Joy's death that causes me concern in that respect, although it's an absolute tragedy. It is the lead up to that death, and it is the fact that she was badly let down by community organisation who should have supported her, and it also involves the situation that it was an unsuccessful political struggle that I had in order to ensure that she got the legal support which she required in order to fight her case. That's what upsets me. There's a mate of mine here in terms of that who could happily tell the thing. The lead up to that, which was a long-running struggle, I really liked Joy Gardner. I thought she was a really nice woman.
if I can show you the first press cutting, which is from The Guardian on the 3rd of August 1993. So this is just a couple of days after she had died. And it relates to, if I can have paragraph 11 up, please, which is in relation to a phone call that the local MP, Bernie Grant, received.
Nice lad, Bernie.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
He's nice lad, Bernie.
Oh. And he was Labour MP for Tottenham, wasn't he? And he received a phone call from Chief Inspector Mark Sanger of Edmonton Police to say that there's a problem in Hornsey we want to tell you about. Mrs. Gardner became hysterical and violent and bit one of the police officers, and she had to be restrained. If we could take that down, please. And the next extract is MM B109 UCPI 36645. It's a Daily Mail article, again from the same day, the 3rd of August 93. And paragraph 9 states that Scotland Yard, which had begun an investigation, said that during her arrest she became abusive and bit an officer before collapsing. We can take that down, please. And the final press cutting I'd like to take you to is a Guardian article. It's behind tab B119, UCPI 36634, from the 11th of August 93. And this section in column 2 relates to solicitors acting for the 3 suspended officers who wished to make it clear that their clients had not spoken to the press or authorised any intermediary to do so. And it's relating to articles that appeared in the Evening Standard on the 10th, so the day before, the 10th of August 93, where an alleged intermediary for the 3 suspended officers gave details of Joy's violent behaviour on the occasion when she was detained. It notes here that campaigners said that the article, in relation to the Evening Standard article, was an attempt to sully Mrs. Gardner's name, and the police are reopening wounds and spreading misinformation. We need to have a public inquiry to get at the truth. And that was somebody from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants.
I know who the lad is, yeah.
Can I ask you, just in terms of that information that was coming out soon after Joy's death, did you know where that information was coming from, and did it chime with what you knew personally about Joy Gardner?
I think, the tale might as well be told. As I said, it's a mate of mine here who's played party to it. I worked at the Trade Union Support Unit. We had an organisation next door to us which was supposed to service people who were asylum seekers, refugees, people were threatened from removal. And that organisation, who's, I can't actually say what his wife is, she's very well known, was not supporting information for people. And I did what I always do in such situations. If people come in, I try to get the help and support that they required. It was a field I didn't know anything about, to be fair. And although I had volunteered at the Haitian Resource Centre in Birmingham through Mohammed Idris in the 80s, he was the first person to fight with a trade union support, a deportation campaign, fantastic man from Bangladesh. And so I tried to get them support. The problem was when Joy came in, I'd sort of exhausted that energies and efforts, and I basically was trying to get her help and support, but I was unable. She came in 3 times to see me, and I wasn't able to get her support. And she disappeared. She was in a terrible state, crying. She was exceptionally depressed about the whole things. She looked at that point a very broken figure. I was really upset and distressed. I said, look, give us your telephone number and the rest of the stuff. She obviously didn't trust me enough to do that. And then the next thing I know was the time I seen in the papers, she was I mean, you cannot know everything about people. She seemed a very beautiful woman. I have no idea. None of the stuff that was said about joy, and I know when people are being around a lot of violent people for lots of different reasons and stuff and all that, Joy Gardner was not like some of the lads I know who got the football and all the rest of the stuff, lads who beat their wives when I was growing up, lads in the military. I cannot say, but that is definitely not my impression of the lassie, and it leaves me pretty cold, to be fair. And I have to say, I was nearly in tears now, earlier on when I seen that, because I didn't know this was coming. I have to say, I haven't really done the thing on it. I mean, as it happens, the subsequent argument I had with the person who didn't service the thing got exceptionally violent, and I'm exceptionally pleased. As I said, one of my mates is in here, prevented that violence breaking out on myself. No, I think this is a lie about the lassie. That's just not my impression of her. I'm sorry about the early situation, but it leaves me very, very, very cold, I have to say. Very cold about the situation. Can't say much more than that.
Mr. Metcalf, that's all I want to ask you about the justice campaigns. If I can move to a different topic now.
I appreciate that. Mm-hmm.
In relation to the affiliation between CRC and some other left-wing groups.
We didn't have affiliations. We had working relationships with people.
Okay.
Of course, we did have... Yeah, that's not true. My apologies. You are correct, yeah.
You addressed it in your witness statement anyway, at paragraph 2.13, and you say, in terms of affiliation, there was affiliation with AFA and IWCA. That was the Anti-Fascist Action and the Independent Working Class Association. You were asked about a number of others as well in relation to East London AFA, the Irish Republican Socialist Party, Red Action and Unison.
We never had affiliations.
Okay.
You didn't affiliate to the IRSP and you didn't affiliate to Red Action. They're separate political organisations in their own rights. We had affiliations to organisations which sought affiliations, and those two organisations didn't. AFA was a combined set of groups that you participated in. The idea that the IRSP would want an affiliation from the Colin Road Centre or HCT or TOSO is an absolute fantasy.
And to be fair, you make that clear in your statement at paragraph 2.14. You say you were only affiliated to AFA and the IWCA, but that was pushed strongly for by Mark Jenner. Is that your recollection?
The IWCA one was pushed for by Mark Jenner, but was supported by people because it was felt that there was a need for a political organisation which represented working class communities. Generally, it was felt to be a good idea, and despite my falling out with people from the past, I thought it was a good idea. I still think it's a good idea.
Before we get on to Mark Jenner's reporting in relation to that.
But did he actively push it? Yeah, but I mean, in general, he wasn't the only person who, and whether he'd been speaking to other people, but he wasn't the only person pushing for that, because it was an idea of its time.
And I think you set out how it was quite democratic. You would vote for that sort of thing,
Yes,
wouldn't you?
Look, my role as the coordinator of the Colin Road Centre was that it was voted. I was voted into that position, and the situation was, if people wanted to remove me, which is that they put it to the members, and I could be removed on the spot. That I'm for that. Every Labour movement position, especially full-time trade union officers, should be electable and immediately recallable in a new form of society. If you go to the large assemblies, which I think would run society, that she or he would be immediately recallable. That they're supposed to act democratically. You're supposed to send she or he to that meeting to represent your views, and if they don't do so, they need recallable and replaceable. It's a principle I've held since I can't even remember how long, but it's a principle
This is in relation to a plan to take over the BNP or NF pitches on Brick Lane.
It was a National Front event.
National Front.
Generally, the National Front had been at Brick Lane for a very long time, even before the BNP had really been actively involved.
And it says, while some remained sceptical about the wisdom of such a confrontation, notably Privacy and Mark Metcalf, finally it was agreed that if it was the wish of the local community to support such activity, then all the organisations present would pledge their support. So my question is, firstly, do you recall
Yes.
the plan to
Yes.
go to
Yes.
Brick Lane?
Yes.
And do you remember being sceptical about a confrontation on Brick Lane?
Well, going back, if you go back to the previous things, okay, could you just go back to, and I want to say the reason why I was sceptical is that some of the organisations, for example, the person identified as Lewis, I knew for many years, the man was a fantasist. And so therefore I was sceptical about it. The man was a fantasist. The people involved in the whatever they were at the college group thing, they were fantasists.
Okay.
They believed stuff which didn't actually take place. So therefore I was sceptical that they could get anybody out. They never managed to get any more than 10 or 12 people on any single events that ever took part. I was sceptical that they could get any community groups in the Brick Lane area involved. The National Front and the BNP had been removed on a number of occasions at the top of Brick Lane, okay?
So this was part of a long... Sorry,
No,
Mr.
hold on a
Metcalf,
second.
but this
Long before I was even in London, many occasions the National Front and the BNP had been removed from the top of the thing. The problem was not their removal. There was plenty of anti-fascist forces to remove them, okay? Plenty. The problem was that they would return the following week, bigger and stronger. So the situation was, I wanted to know if we mobilised people in sufficient numbers, was this likely to give the death knell to those organisations? Now, what you have to understand is because of the activities of anti-fascist action, okay, and because of the activities of Red Action, which is why I was actively involved with them, okay, the fascists had abandoned street politics. The fascists in East London had said that anti-fascist action could not mobilise enough people to march through the Bethnal Green area because they had large numbers of people that would come out and attack that demonstration. The active work that we did meant we made a 4,000 strong march through Bethnal Green, and not a single person came out and opposed that. I wanted to know, right, I wanted to know if we went to that event that it would finish them off. That's why I was the thing. I didn't want people to go down there with the possibility, and I didn't want the police to know that they're there. I wanted to know that we would have enough numbers to take over that situation, and that in the following weeks we would mobilise the same numbers of people, that it wouldn't be a one-off event. Okay, and that was my conscience. But I was conscious that the names of some of these people and the organisations who were involved, hang on, this is important, the names of the organisations of the people were actually going to be able to do that. And some of the people listed on those things are simply fantasists.
Mr. Metcalf, is your evidence essentially that what we know about the BNP stand on Brick Lane, and we've seen some evidence about that earlier on in this phase of the inquiry, it was part of a longer running campaign, anti-fascist campaign?
Historically, it had been the desire, right? Even in the 70s, when the ANL, for example, mobilised at carnivals 100,000 people, the fascists were still doing stuff at Brick Lane. It was a serious point of contention as to when the fascists, on this particular day when they were hosting the carnival organisers at the ANL, the typical leadership of the Anti-Nazi League, refused
refused to tell the demonstration, the people there, 100,000 people, because what was wanted was to get the whole 100,000 people to go to Tower Hamlets that day and make sure that event was finished. That was the plan.
Would this be an example, knowing what we know about Mark Jenner's targeting strategy, would these be the sort of examples where public disorder could be anticipated?
Of course, public disorder. The intention was that there'd be more of us than them. And if public disorder was to take place, then we wanted to make sure that we were strong enough in order to hold that base.
And in terms of, when you're saying hold the base, are you talking about aggressively confronting people physically?
There'd be more of us than them.
Was it more defensive?
There'd be more of us than them. There'd be more of us than them, that they would be assured that if they decided to cause any bother with us, that we could look after ourselves and we would keep the base. The issue of fascism is quite straightforward. It's quite straightforward. There's no compromises in that situation. Fascists, especially in working class communities, need to show that they're hard. They need to demonstrate that they can show that they're harder than us, okay? And if you break that down, that breaks that situation. By 1993 or 1994, as a result of anti-fascist action, in particular, taking their spots, when they announced they were having an event, we would get there, and they couldn't get those events back. They could not get those events back. We were the persons in control of that space. There's no question about it. There's no difference to what happened on the fields of across Europe in the 1930s, and the 1940s, where some members of the British Armed Forces were anti-fascists.
Can I ask you about Welling? We can take that down off the screen. Were you at Welling on the 16th of October 93?
I was at Welling on the 16th of October.
There's a suggestion in one of the reports...
fantasy by the organisers. Fantasy.
There's a suggestion in one of the reports that you were expecting seasoned fighters from Holland and Germany to attend the what was deemed the anti-BNP demonstration at Welling. What do you say about that? Were you expecting people from other countries to attend?
I went on the event with mates of mine who were cab drivers. I played I never went anywhere near any events. I never had anything to do. I never had anything to do with the AFA delegation, people in AFA, basically, who I know on that particular didn't go on it. I felt the whole thing was a fantasy, to be frank. People were attacking metal gates and the rest of the stuff. What the police did to them was an absolute disgrace. But it was a showcase. It was a showcase event between organisations who had no real history of anti-fascism. The ANL has had no history of actual anti-fascism, except going back to the late 70s and early 80s. They invented their history. They continue to invent their history, and they continue to confuse working class youth today. So I had nothing to do with that, and I felt the whole event and the decision that was taken in that respect was nothing short of a fantasy. But I had absolutely no involvement in the thing. The only involvement I had, and I think it's in my case notes, is the woman I was living with at the time went to the front of that demonstration and participated in what happened. I think that woman was supplying, before this happened, information on me to the Metropolitan Police. The letter which she wrote when she left my house is almost exactly a replica of the letters that the women received when they're things. She's definitely not an undercover police officer, but I do think that she was supplying information on me. I chucked her out of my house because she was taking ecstasy.
Can I ask you, just on that particular point about seasoned fighters coming from
I've no knowledge
abroad,
of it.
do you
I've absolutely
recognise that?
I've no knowledge of that in terms of the situation. And there was no way the large numbers that they were going to get, and fair play to them in terms of the situation. I had no doubt that the fascists were not going to mobilise. The fascists at that point could mobilise small numbers of people in terms of the situation. And to be honest with you, they were, in terms of a physical sense, they were broken politically organisations. They were
My point about asking you about that distancing is by the time Mark Jenner is attending at the Colin Roach Centre in 95, you are not so close to AFA or even Red Action at that point.
I might as well say the leadership hated me, and my feelings weren't as strong towards that, because I was appreciative, very appreciative of. It was also the period when I was getting moved on from the trade unions, but I was very appreciative of their support, and I'd gone drinking with some of the lads, and I still know one or two of the people. I've never had any grief of people in the organisation, but politically, we strongly disagreed. Amongst some of the disagreement, I felt that
so it was a political divide.
Anti-fascist action should do. I felt that the issue that would be of importance to anti-fascists in the future would be around refugees and asylum seekers and deportation. I was wrong by 15 years, but I suppose I was right in the longer run, and I felt that they weren't prepared to engage in that sort of in that situation. That was my disagreement. But I also felt that the work we were conducting in Hackney was important work, and I felt that was a situation. But I'm definitely not gonna. I'm proud of the activities that the people in anti-fascist action engaged in, and some of them I've found to be incredible characters.
A report of October 95.
But Mark Jenner had nothing to do. He doesn't. This is an invention after the. That's what I think anyway.
We'll come to some of the reports in particular, and you can comment on those. But in terms of a report in October 95. It states that attempts to establish an anti-fascist unity group was unsuccessful, although each group, including the CRC, could turn out small numbers of capable street fighters, but far too few to even contemplate serious AF activity.
That's correct.
I don't need to show that, sir, but for the record, it's in the CRC bundle behind tab B54. It's MPS 0245537, a report of the 4th of October 95. This suggestion that you could turn out...
I can't see this on here, by the way.
Sorry?
I can't see this on
here.
No,
I'm not going to show it, because I'm going to move on through a few reports now. But in terms of the suggestion that you could turn out a few capable street fighters, is that an accurate way to describe the people that were part of the anti-fascist movement through CRC? Because does that suggest that they are street fighters out looking for a fight, or are we talking stewarding, defensive? How would you describe them?
Well, for one, the situation is that the same people were the people who went out leafleting, they went out talking to people, they went out with a knowledge of anti-fascism. They could speak to people on the street. So if we went somewhere where if people were asking, well, what are you doing here? We would be in a position to say we're anti-fascists, and there's these sorts of groups. So we could call on so it isn't just about being street fighters in terms of that. That denigrates the overall situation that you're engaged in, and that's important to say. In terms of the situation, I can't remember any events that we're actually talking about apart from one in which Mark Jenner was present. But yeah, there were people. There's about half a dozen of us. Yeah.
The one that Mark Jenner was present in, I think. Do you address that in your witness statement
a little bit later
I do. In relation to a pub?
Of course I do. Yeah.
October 95. Then, that's when we have the launch of Resistance.
Yeah.
That was on the 28th of October 95.
Yes. The
reference, and I'm not going to bring it up, is in the Metcalf bundle behind tab B44, MPS 0245625, just for the record. Can you explain very briefly?
I haven't got it in front of me.
I'm not going to bring it up, but
sorry.
just from your recollection, what Resistance, how was that different to the CRC, or what was it? Was it an umbrella type of organisation with a political
Well,
constitution?
what had happened is we'd had communication from people in many different parts of the southeast, particularly from the Brent area, okay, and they'd asked could they affiliate to the centre, and they wanted to establish similar centres in their locations. Gravesend was another one that I recalled. So we had potentially another 3 to 4 centres that we thought we might be in a position to open, and they came with as like what is, you know, what programme and what policies do you have, which is why we thought doing the IWC thing was good, because they'd have a programme, they'd have policies, and they had some support themselves in Oxford. And so that actually the demand came initially from outside of the group.
So resistance was a way of
Just a
coordinating
word.
those 3 different
Yeah,
centres.
there was more. There was more than 3 or 4. But we had some like really silly ones. Like I think one of them was from the Highlands of Scotland. And much as I love going to the Highlands of Scotland, I didn't think we were going to likely to be able to offer them much in the way of support from London.
Can I bring up a document then
I just didn't think
in the
that was the
Metcalf
case.
bundle behind tab 48, which is MPS 0245790, and this is a meeting on the 14th of December 95 between CRC and AFA.
Again, I've never seen this document before.
Okay, this is one of Mark Metcalf's. Well, it's a special branch report fed into by Mark Jenner. And paragraph 3 recognises that.
I wasn't intimidated out of redaction in that respect, no.
But it
I wasn't.
recognises that there were some past
Yeah,
difficulties
I
between
wasn't
the leaders.
intimidated out of redaction. I left of my own free will. I disagreed politically on that sort of situations. People could get very angry and agitated. I know that people in AFA and other stuff and other things then had physical altercations. That wasn't the case with myself. And
So the last sentence there says that individual members of the CRC would be welcome to join AFA in their own right. And then paragraph 5, please. We can see that a vote was taken, and with the exception of 3 people, everyone was in favour of the CRC affiliating to the East London branch of AFA. 2 CRC delegates were nominated to attend the next East London AFA meeting, namely Privacy, otherwise known as Privacy, who is already well known to AFA, and Mark Cassidy. So Mark Cassidy being the undercover officer, he was one of the delegates to that next meeting of AFA. Do you recall that?
yeah,
Okay. How many were present at that meeting? Do you know? If we go on to the next page.
I mean, if it was a CRC meeting, I think we've got the minutes, haven't you? Some of them have got them. We tended to have around 10 to 15 people came to the meeting. We had a much larger milieu of people. It wouldn't be the same 10 or 15 people, and they would be supportive of that situation.
So the list of people here that we can see on page 2 isn't necessarily all of the people. These are just the ones that.
The meeting took place. A meeting took place, and this year there was only 8 or 9 people at the meeting. Well,
Yeah.
we no, that's not a CRC meeting. We never had 9 or 10 people. We always had more than that. But it
Okay.
was. I mean, the room we had could get about the room at Clarence Road. We could comfortably get 20 people in. and we
this
would
be a
have
sort
people who would come and speak during those meetings.
Would this be a sort of meeting where the vote of Mark Cassidy could swing the vote one way or the other?
Of course. I mean, you know, the people who are anti-fascists would ultimately, it's merely a political and a physical struggle around fascism. Would be respectful of somebody who would be big enough and strong enough that he could stand up if being attacked. Naturally.
How much influence did Mark Jenner have in terms of voting one way or the other for CRC to affiliate itself with AFA or ELFA?
He would have some influence on anti-fascism. He would have a significant influence because, as I said, he could be assured that he's as he demonstrated on occasions, he's a big, strong lad.
And given that he was nominated to be the CRC delegate to the next AFA meeting, he'd have a bit of sway as to the activities of CRC in that, would he?
Yes, of course he would, and he would be the person who would have brought back the situation.
And in
he
your
would have brought
witness
back the discussion. Yes, as was normal on any, we would have lots of discussions like this, and we would have discussions where anybody who wanted us to affiliate would be expected to come up and put their political position, and it would be discussed.
And in your witness statement, paragraph 2.35, you say that Mark Jenner was the one who was often pushing that agenda towards the anti-fascist agenda. Is that your recollection?
Yeah, that's true, of course.
Yeah. And is that true across the board, not just at one or two meetings, but generally was that his interest?
No, that wasn't his only interest. He would... it might be something he brought up in the meetings, but for example, he would pick up and take home Malcolm Kennedy, who, as we know, was done for manslaughter of somebody who we campaigned with. He was interested enough to try and speak to Malcolm Kennedy. He was interested in different issues.
Okay.
Things. So it would be wrong to say that's the only issue. If that was the only thing he was actually bothered with, then he wouldn't have got the time of day. Nobody who came in with a single issue and who wasn't prepared. Also, if you became you could become a CRC member and you could pay a subscription, but there was a responsibility which came with that, which is why ultimately it also led on to a degree set of policies that people were expected to.
So because you expected people to be involved?
You expected. We didn't want people.
Mr. Metcalf, I've got an eye on the time, and I think we might break for lunch.
Okay.
We'll start again at 2.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.